Welcome everybody. I'm very happy to have David Furs with us today, joining in our session. We did previously run this session with a group of Zoom participants, and due to some technological joys, we've decided to rerun it so that without all the bits and pieces. So look forward to you receiving some fantastic insights. We're going to share today some case studies of clients we've worked together on. We're going to share some of our relevant expertise so that we can hopefully give you some ideas how to handle COVID right now with your business and marketing, and then look at some tactical ways that you can move forward post-COVID. So look forward to sharing all that with you. What we're going to do is we're going to allow you to see the PowerPoint specifically. So let's go. And just know that at the end, there's not going to be a big sales push. This is all about us sharing our knowledge. So we will, though, however, give you the opportunity to have a 30-minute conversation with either of us, should you wish, to talk about potentially any of the roadblocks that you may be facing or anything that might come up as a result of our session today. So let's go. And David, I'll get you to introduce yourself a little bit later.
All right.
Okay, so if we stop our videos. Right, so let's go. So, some of you may be feeling a little like this right now. We know that certainly some of our clients are. They got smashed during the GFC. They lost everything during the floods. They were able to fight tooth and nail to come back and get things back on track. The bushfires hit, but now COVID. So they're just feeling like they're getting smashed and smashed and smashed. And some of you may be able to relate that asking the question, do I really want to continue on? What we want to do in this session is we really want to be able to give you some inspiration, some motivation, some tips and tricks so that you feel more like this, that things are able to come back and you can get past this. That's the goal of today. Here's what we're covering. We're going to start by focusing on what you can control right now during this COVID procedure. We're going to move on to throwing out your current business plan and planning for this step, the next step, and the following step. And then we're going to talk about how you can prepare now to beat the curve and come out on top. Now, why should you listen to us? Who are we? David, I'd love for you to take a moment to introduce yourself and tell everybody about you.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle, and welcome everybody to this session. I think I'm a qualified accountant and I'm a fellow of CPA Australia. I've got an MBA, all that type of stuff, but that's all about academic and real life experience is more important than that. So I've worked in senior roles in commercial space for several organisations, from government to multinationals. And what I've found when I worked with those is similar problems kept arising. Now, bigger business can absorb those problems and move on, but smaller businesses were experiencing those issues as well. And unfortunately for smaller businesses, it's harder for them to recover if an issue does arise. So what I work on with small businesses is look at planning, at understanding the numbers so that they work for you rather than you just looking at a number and saying, oh, that looks good or it doesn't, but understanding what it means. And the reason I work with Michelle is she takes on, so from the process part, Michelle can take the actual operational part and move forward in doing the advertising and marketing to help the business to grow and to work together to make it grow effectively and head towards the vision or the business that you wanted to create.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And it is true, because I have a background in strategic human resource management and marketing. I too have found that businesses were coming to us and they didn't have their numbers in order. They didn't have the financials. They didn't really know what they were striving for. And having been in business 16 years myself now across different industries, I realized the importance of aligning the business or organizational strategy with the marketing strategy. And that's what David and I are able to do very well. And as such, then our team can then implement what is needed in order to get the fast results. But the beauty of that as well, we have found, is that it's great getting results, but if you haven't got somebody like a David, you can grow too fast and a lot of issues and things can come up. So it works very, very well. So what I'd love to do now is hand over to David for our first session on focusing on what you can control.
Yeah, I think as a mindset type of thing, the first thing that you need to address is making sure that you're in the game, okay? A lot has happened and a lot of businesses feel disempowered and they feel nervous about the future. So next slide, Michelle, thank you. So just a quick confidence check on you and how you're going. How confident are you about your business future? Now, I've got a scale there, 1, which is really poor, 3, sorry, which is a so-so, that you're feeling okay, but not ecstatic about it. And number 5 is excellent. So think about your business for a moment. Where would you put yourself on that scale? Now, if you've said sort of between 3 and 5, that's great. Obviously 5 is the best to be up to. But a lot of businesses that I've spoken with about this sort of rate between 3 and 4, which is, yeah, I think I'm okay, but I'm not sure what to do next. And that's the clarity that we'll talk about today, and also about going forward if you need extra support. If you're in the 1 or 2 range, then you really need some help and you really need to start to reach out because you're heading for a disaster of a business. You'll crash and burn quicker than if you had a more positive mindset. So we are now living in the history lesson of the future. Think of that for a minute, right? That's in itself is an amazing thing to think of, that in years to come, people are going to be looking back at 2020 and go, how did they do that? How did they get through that? How did they cope with it? And so looking at what we're doing now will be a learning curve for governments and for schools and for academics of the future. But I want you to think about something for a moment. If your business was a case study in that history lesson, what would it show about you as a business owner? What would it show about your mindset? And would it be one of those that are, this is how to do it properly? Or would you be in the, this is how not to do it and how to learn from it next time? And I know everyone wants to be obviously in that first category, so I've done it right. But the only way that you're going to do it right is by focusing on who you are and what you need to do right now, and actually do some actions towards it. So I've got a quote up here: do not spend your energy trying to change what you cannot control. Focus on your mindset, your attitude, and create clarity around what you can control. And if you think about that for a moment, if you're playing a victim, and if you're saying, oh dear, this whole thing, businesses have shut down, the economy is not working effectively, there's not enough people on the street to come into my shop front, whatever business says in your mind, you can't control any of that. It just is what it is. Yeah, okay, we live with it, we don't ignore it, it does exist. However, there's no point fighting it. What you have to do is focus your energy towards what you can control to make your business cope with where we're at, and then thrive once we get through the other side, whenever that may be. Now, so overcoming your mindset, you have to always think positive. You have to believe in yourself and remove your negative self-talk, which is you'll never do it, this is crap, whatever it might be in your mind. You have to eliminate your fear, and you have to set effective strategic goals. And they have to be structured properly. So strategic goals, I'm not talking about what you're doing this week or this month. I'm talking more about what are you doing in the next 6 months and the next year after that. So in that then, there's 2 stages. And the first stage you have to do now is look at your cash flow. How are you going to save costs so you will survive through this period until the end of when COVID restrictions are lifted? And you have to look at how you're getting money through the door, and also how you're going to cut your costs. And there's 2 types of costs. One are the fixed costs, the things you have to pay. So if you didn't pay them, your business would shut down immediately. So it might be your rent or your power bills or things like that. It's your staffing. And again, incentive packages from the government are helping towards keeping staff on board. But there are discretionary costs, again, that you need to cut, but you need to cut in the right place. So don't just cut off everything which you feel is discretionary. So like, memberships to organisations or professional organisations, or it might be online systems such as your CRM. If you cut off the wrong areas, you're actually impacting on the return that you're getting on that investment. So you have to look at costs as a cost which doesn't return to your business, or as an investment which will provide you with a return. And in that way, you'll be able to distinguish which costs you can reduce and eliminate now. The other thing you need to look at going forward is what your break-even point is. So once you've looked at your costs, how do you determine what your break-even is? And that's the point where you can make decisions. If you're below your break-even, you have to come back up to at least break-even at this point. If you're making a profit or a return, that's excellent, but it has to be at least break-even. Otherwise, it's costing you money to stay open. And then looking at changing, and you've seen restaurants which have changed their offerings, where they offer home delivery, for example, where they never had home delivery before. So it creates a revenue for now, but is that a sustainable revenue? And that's the things you have to look at. What can I do now to survive, which is what we're in the survival mode, and then look at the longer term into how we start to thrive and develop our business further.
Fantastic. And we will, I will share a case study on one of our clients a little bit later about that. And it's interesting when David talks about cutting costs, because, when times get tough, generally marketing is the first thing to go because it seems fluffy. And it's interesting because, as David said, it's about investing in the things that are giving you that return on investment. So it's very important to be tracking and measuring and actually identifying where you're getting the return and continuing or even investing more into that, and then cutting other areas. So for us, to be honest, yes, our bigger clients, we did cut their SEO, we cut their AdWords, but for others, we've increased Facebook advertising, we've increased, flyers depending upon the business. So it's just so important to be tracking and measuring everything and making sure you're getting that best bang for your buck. When it comes to marketing, I believe that this quote, which is one of my favorites, stands truer than ever. It's so true that, look, now more than ever, if you are not online and your business is not promoting itself online, I'm going to be really blunt and say that you are in danger. Okay, a couple of months ago, a year ago, you might have been okay, but right now it's time to be online and it's time to market more. So let me just talk about a few reasons why. The top one in itself, 10 million users to 200 million in March alone joined Zoom. So if that's not enough to help you realize that more people are online, there's some more facts. Of course, we have millions of people working from home. In the past, on average, people would look at their emails 30 times in 1 hour. Now they're sitting at home, they're bored, they're probably a little bit depressed, they want some escapism. I'm sure that number's gone up. On average, it used to be 3.5 hours per day on the phone, on social media. Now, how many times do you look at your phone these days? And what are you actually looking at? We all need a little bit of escape right now, especially sometimes from the children. So in that regard, we as a marketing agency are actually spending the least on Facebook advertising ever and seeing the greatest results. The largest audiences are being built. The greatest engagements are being had. And the thing is, people are hungry for answers and certainty, and they're looking for businesses to give them that information. So we do have certain industries that are absolutely flying, such areas as accounting, bookkeeping, the HR departments, because all of those areas, people want answers. The gatekeepers have gone. You have access to so many new people, new alliances. Now is the time to create relationships. And that is what the goal of marketing is. So, every single client and every job we take on, the goal is to create relationships with potential clients, to showcase your products and services through the right channels or pipelines, utilizing a clear message so your potential clients come running. Now is a time for you as an organization to be providing that information. And look, we are in a bit of a holding pattern. So utilize this time to be relevant. And what I mean by that is, for your ideal clients right now, what is it that they really need from you right now? What problem are you solving? Share that and be certain. They're looking for leaders who are positive and can help them, guide them through. People, they are stressed, they can't think clearly. So it's really important to be situationally aware. And what I mean by that is, it's not a time for gouging. It's not a time for offering $10,000, packages. It's a time to show that you're here to help and to guide. And the most important thing right now is that, Maslow's number one need, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it used to be security, but right now it's connection. So more than ever, it's a really good opportunity for businesses to be jumping online and connecting with their future potential clients. Over to David.
Thanks, Michelle. And you're right, the business community is in a holding pattern. But this is the time when you need to take that fresh look at your business and go, what can I do to take my business to that next level, or to the level where I've always wanted to be, but I've never had the time to concentrate or focus on it. Throw out your current business plan. And this is a little bit controversial. Some might say, oh, what are you talking about? You always need a plan. And yep, you definitely do, but you need the right type of plan. At the moment, your current business plan is based on a series of assumptions. It's based on a starting point as to where you were when you developed that plan, and growth rates or financial returns or whatever it might have been in the assumptions in that plan. However, once COVID-19 happened and the economy and the business community changed, all those assumptions now are incorrect. They're flawed, because your starting point has definitely changed. So what you have to look at this now is that we are starting afresh, and you have to start from baseline where we are now and how it looks, and then move forward. So to do planning now and to make it an effective plan, we have to have 3 phases. And phase 1 is looking at between now and the day the restrictions of COVID are lifted. When that date is, nobody knows. The Prime Minister has said, yeah, up to 6 months. It could be 9 months, it could be 3. And as you all know, at the time of this, that we're doing this, there's a whole argument about don't talk about releasing restrictions, we're not there yet. So it could go on for a longer period. But this gives us the opportunity now to look at where we are now and how the business landscape has changed. What we're doing now is in survival mode nearly, but we have to look at how we make it work for us. So once restrictions are lifted, we're on the front foot. So then in phase 2, what we're looking at is taking that point at the end of the COVID restrictions being lifted and adding 12 months to that. So what will our business be in that 12-month period post that? And it will be looking at, again, developing new assumptions for our business because consumer expectations have changed, the business dynamic has changed, the way people are doing business has changed with more online versus face-to-face. And then once phase 1 and phase 2 are done, which is in conjunction with each other, phase 3 is all about going into the usual, I'll call it, business planning cycle, which is how do we then start from that 12 months or the end of that 12-month period and continue our business on growing. And the idea behind all that is at the moment in phase 1, we are doing certain things. So here we are today, we've got the end of COVID 2019. So there are several things you can do. If you do nothing at the moment, you'll end up basically creating a destroyed business. You won't even make it to the end of COVID-19. If you're sitting there working in your business and struggling, or you may end up getting to the end, but then you'll be starting from scratch because again, the business landscape, consumer confidence has changed. So if you look at those arrows, the length of the arrows is relative time it will take you to get to those points. So as you can see, even to get back to your status quo, which is the ditto box in the middle, it's going to take you a period of time. You're closer to disaster or a deteriorating business than you're continuing with your status quo. If you do nothing at all, let me emphasize that. And then you're even further away from developing or creating that dynamic business, the one you deserve, the one you dreamt of, the one your vision says. So what you have to do now is actually go into the today, start doing something, and then you'll end up at the top of that line. So again, you look at the relative lengths of those arrows, and you're closer to the dynamic and the developing side because you are on the front foot. And in fact, you're probably going to be ahead of your market if you start focusing on working on your business instead of working in it. Because a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of businesses are in this firefighting mode and trying to survive and pivoting products and services, and that's great. But you've got to create that sustainable long-term view on the whole thing. Otherwise, you'll just end up at the bottom of the ladder again. So what do I mean then by phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? Well, phase 1 is about getting on that upward trajectory, as I mentioned. So what do you need to do is to manage your cash flow. Start, as I said earlier, looking at eliminating costs that don't contribute to your business. And that involves negotiating with suppliers. It might involve sourcing things locally rather than going to your normal supplier because of supply chain, thing like that. But be careful not to remove items which have a return on investment. So as Michelle said, the marketing, if you have an accountant, a business advisor, all of those things add value to your business. So be careful not to cut in the wrong areas. And that's a short-term survival strategy. But when you then look at your business strategy overall, and I'll go back to the example that I used previously, where restaurants are now doing home delivery where they never did it before. There are businesses which were business to business are now doing business to consumer, again, to make ends meet. But is that a long-term strategy for your business? So look at your vision and your mission and revise them if you want to, because this is a time to redefine who you are. So look at what you're doing, what you're delivering now in a survival strategy. Will that continue on into phase 2 beyond the phase 1 strategy and after the COVID restrictions are lifted? Will it be profitable for you? Is it something that your customers are expecting from you? And make sure then over phase 1, you're communicating all these decision processes to your customers, prospective customers, whoever you communicate with, because take them on the journey. They don't have to be involved in the decision making, but take them on the journey with you so they feel part of that decision process. If you ignore what consumers are expecting, and if you ignore what your current customers are expecting after this, and then you go back to your status quo, which you had before, potentially you're going to lose a whole heap of customers, and that is why you'll end up at the bottom of the ladder, as I showed that diagram before. So what you have to do then is look at where we are now, where you want to be at the end of COVID, and that includes all those product lines and those service lines that you may include. And there's a gap. So how do you fill that gap? Create that gap analysis as to where you want to be. And that then forms the strategic goals that you have to look at in the first pass. How do we get there? What do I need to do today to make that happen? And that might be policies and procedures. It might be the communication methodologies. It might be sales and marketing. It might be understanding your business a lot better, whatever it is. But how do you cover those gaps to build that bridge to that end of phase 1?
Fantastic, fantastic. And I think the most important thing that we're trying to say here, and particularly during this time when, as business owners, we are stressed, that it's very important that you have a plan to get there. So, as we mentioned in the beginning, once David looks at the actual business plan and the business strategy going forward, from a marketing perspective, then we know what we need to do in order to achieve those goals. So at this stage, because we are in phase 1, as David alluded to, it's important to get your house of business in order and make sure that your foundations are very strong at this point. So he's absolutely right. So many businesses have put their head in the sand and have stopped communicating with their current clients. And that is one of the worst things you can do right now, because they are just as stressed and just as worried, and they want that certainty from you as a provider. So it's important to keep communicating and looking at those areas where you are still the leaders in the market. As David mentioned, look at your product and service offering. You want to be creating revenue generating products for right now. Now, they might be completely different to your current service offerings, and it might even be a completely different client. It might be lower end products, lower margin products, volume products. But whatever it is you need to do first to survive, and then be very clear on that and have your marketing strategy and positioning for that client, and then you can move on to phase 2, which we'll talk about later. So what that might include in regards to revising your brand positioning. So, we've moved some of our trades clients from business to residential because there's more opportunity. We've moved some clients from face-to-face to virtual. So, when it comes to your brand position, do you have the same clients? Are they on the same channels? Is it a different message? It's very important to, make sure that what you're putting out there is relevant to them right now so that you can continue to operate. And of course, all of that takes a clear plan to roll that out. The third area you're looking at is you then want to build awareness for your products and services. And once again, it might be a whole new audience. So this is where we talk about the roof, and you want to have a nice strong roof of clients that you're basically putting into the top of your sales funnel. So these clients, they might be your clients right now, or they might be your future potential clients. But now is a time to, utilize those connections, build up, put your content out there, educate your market, take them through the buying cycle faster, and put them all in the top of your sales funnel sell them a lower revenue generating product right now to keep you going. And then when the time is right, you've got them, they love you, they know, like, and trust you. You can then, open the doors to phase 2 and phase 3, and which we'll talk about future, what number 4 is, and then you are ready to go. And in the meantime, you've survived. What I want to do now is just give you a case study of a client, just to take you through the process of what we've done and what the results were. So this particular client is a dog training client. 90% of their revenue came from face-to-face training, and 10% of their revenue came from selling products online. Of course, joyous COVID hit, and 90% of their business was gone when the body mentioned that, there was no more face-to-face. So as a result of that, luckily, we've been working with this client for 8 months. So we had been talking about going virtual back in December for their strategy for this year. So we were able to get them up and running pretty quickly with the virtual training, which in itself opened up new opportunities of lower costs. Of course, now we're solving new problems of lower price points during tougher times, solve the isolation problem, the poor people home with the kids who are bored, and also the fact that suddenly all these dogs had their family members home and went a little bit wild. So beautiful new opportunities there. So then we looked at the brand positioning. Now they're still the best in the business, so that hasn't really changed. However, we understood now that there was a new clientele base. Again, another opportunity. Because we were virtual, we didn't have to be local anymore. We actually had we could go national and international. So it was wider, broader, deeper. And we also have a lovely girl who can do Mandarin and Cantonese training. So that was another new market. And of course, all the online products, because now people are stuck at home. So we looked at that. We looked at handbooks and other things we could sell. So that was all fantastic. We started to get the message out to the potential clients. We identified all the new ones. We made new videos to match and social media posts, etc. And new products. And then we started targeting with our pipelines. We went to Facebook advertising. We're looking at WeChat for the Asian market. We introduced fabulous email sequences with lots of hints and tips and tricks to keep people interested. And of course, we made phone calls to alliances to get the ball rolling there as well. Now I want to talk about the results for you. Now, I want to stress here that David wasn't actually our business advisor in this situation. And as a result, I want to tell you what happened. It's not the nicest story, but I think it's really important to share with you that everything is not a positive. Now, we've been working with this client for 8 months. And in that 8 months, their investment with us was $35,000 and their return was $90,000. In the last 3 months alone, we've given them a 25% increase on last year. And, everything was flowing along really nicely. Now, once COVID hit and the face-to-face got shut down, the first week we lost 40%. But then we were able to introduce virtual, started the Facebook advertising, emails, etc. And the second week, we actually picked up 20% of that, which was fantastic. The third week, we launched new email sequences, etc. And the online sales went to 50% of revenue, which was beautiful. And the thing is, we were back on track to the revenue prior. The sad part now, though, is that the client panicked. And, this is an indication of why it is so very important to have that business advisor there with you who really knows what they're talking about and can really help you to understand the results that you're getting. The client doesn't understand staffing. She doesn't understand profits or margins or anything like that. And as a result, she actually panicked. She's very risk averse and decided to pull all her advertising. Now, we were only spending $68 a week to get thousands, between $5,000 and $9,000 a week. So, you know, when you understand figures like that, it's madness. And unfortunately, last week, so that was the end of March, last week figures dropped by 50%, and this week it's heading the same way. So the sad part about that is when you don't understand what you should be investing in because you don't understand your figures, it can really lead to negative results. So hopefully that client, we've got fingers crossed that she'll work that out and switch back, and we'll turn everything back on, and we'll get her back up there. But that's just an indication for you. And so then we'll move back to David about phase 2.
Thanks, Michelle. And that's very stark of a lot of businesses. You know, if you cut in the wrong areas, you are going to jeopardize your business. Financially, or it might be reputationally, but there's a lot of ways that you could damage your business by cutting the wrong areas. So when you are cutting costs and making ends meet, make sure you're cutting the right costs and not the, as we mentioned before, the investments in your business.
So true.
In phase 2, then sort of taking up from the end of phase 1 is the end of COVID, just to recap on that. So once restrictions are lifted, what happens to your business? And this is where the fun really begins, because over the period now, you are in that survival mode, and you've been planning to start your business and continue on with that consumer confidence. This is when the rubber hits the road and the consumer confidence returns. So you've got to be on the front foot and then look at where you want your business to be in the 12 months following. So what do you want to achieve once that 12-month period is over? So from restrictions to 12 months and subsequent to that. And you've got to, again, look at what services you want to deliver on, what product lines you're going to have, who your suppliers are. And it might be local businesses. You might be focusing now more on local content rather than importing from overseas or whatever it might be, because the restrictions, when they're lifted or when they're removed here, doesn't necessarily mean they're removed in other states or indeed in other countries. So it's a whole impact on how we look and how we're going to move forward. So looking again at your vision and your mission for your business, where you want to take your business now, what do you have to do in the next 12 months to take you on that stepping stone to make that dynamic business we were talking about earlier? And again, create that gap analysis. This is where I want to be at the end. This is where I am now, which is the starting point that you developed from phase 1, and then work it forward from that. And I think, I just want to recap on a couple of things. If you've created a product or a service in the phase 1 to make your business survive, will that continue on in the new phase 2? Will you still be doing that? Is it profitable for you to do that? Will it help you your vision to do that? And you've got to take that realistic look at everything. And at the moment there's some relaxation around the rules from the council, around things which are being regulations around what you can and can't deliver. However, those regulations and coverage will return at a period of time, probably during this phase 2 period. So you've got to make sure you're covered off for it. So just because it's not costing you something now, it might be that in the future it will cost you money to do, from a licensing perspective, or from a perspective where you has to be regulated in some way. So make sure you do your costings around that, and make sure you still focus on your break-even points, because obviously in this phase you want to start to be generating profit. What does that profit mean? How do you know when that profit is starting to be generated? And indeed, when do you know to return the shop front? When do you know? What are the trigger points where you'll bring your staffing back on? Have you restructured your storefront to suit what you want to do in the future and what you want to deliver on? So all these questions need to be answered. And as I say, this is the time to develop that plan. It's now. In conjunction with the phase 1 and the phase 2, they work together to make it, give you that vision for 18 months down the track where you want your business to be.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, and actually, Dave, I'll just jump in there because I'm missing a slide. So with the house before, and I'm just going to go back to that. You know, now, as David said, with your gap analysis, it is such a good time for you to be working on the walls of your house. So, you know, those sort of things include getting yourself ready in regards to making sure that, you know, all of your social media sites are all up to scratch. You know, all of your branding, it looks wonderful across your quotes and across your systems and things like that. You know, if you are business to business, getting onto your LinkedIn and fixing up your summaries and who your targets are and all of that sort of thing, you know, and making sure that your CRM systems, your newsletters are going out to your clients with the relevant information for them right now. Number 4, that should be popping up here, but the joy is lead generation. And that actually talks about when all of this is over and you're into phase 2, then you can actually invite people to come into your door of the house. But if you find that your walls aren't strong and your roof is not full of audience and people, and your foundations aren't nice and set in place, that when the people do get invited in, the whole thing is going to collapse, or they're not even going to come in. So when I talk about that, now is also a really good time to, you know, be asking your past clients for testimonies to get that credibility and proof, to even be looking for free public relations out there, that sort of thing, so that when, you know, during this process, you're keeping people engaged, and when it is time for phase 2, you can invite them in and they'll come running and they'll just love everything that you have to offer them in your wonderful house of business. And now we can move on to phase 3.
Well, I think just touching on that point, Michelle, and you raised a very good point there. At the end of phase 1, as I said, some businesses will not survive till the end of COVID. And it's going to leave gaps in the marketplace. So it's an opportunity for you to grow into those gaps. The other thing it's going to do is there will be other people who have lost their jobs and always wanted to enter your market. So this will be the time where they go, oh, maybe I'll enter now because, you know, I don't have a job, I've got nothing to lose. And you want that credibility with your business so that when consumers do return and the confidence does return, they look at Google or they look at reviews and go, oh, this company or this business has several reviews which are positive. This other business which has just started up, you know, has nothing. So you want to be at the forefront of the market again, to be that business of choice, and not just one in the crowd where a business who just entered the market, paid a fortune in Facebook advertising, happens to be, you know, AdWords or whatever else at the top of the Google search, and is the one that's clicked on first. You want to have that credibility so that people will come to you.
Absolutely, the leaders in the market.
Exactly right. And then phase 3, sort of after we've looked at the post-COVID period, now we've traveled 12 months down the track and we've stabilized our business. Phase 3 is looking at the business planning process of the future. So for those of you who have had business plans before or have developed them, you know that normally you do a 1 year, a 3 year and a 5 year view. This becomes like nearly the longer term or the 5 year view, because you've now got a little bit more surety and a little bit more of a picture of how the market's working. You've got a picture of how your business is working. And this then becomes back into the normal business planning cycle. How do I start to plan for those out years? And how do I start to have that forecast growth, or the introducing new products, which may or may not have been done already? And how do you build on the business that you created to move forward then into what will be the normal? And that time again is looking at gap analysis, but this is where your strategic goal setting comes in, because then you've already built your plans for phase 1 and phase 2, and now you're building on that to grow forward and to move closer to your vision and to that business you've always wanted, and to the success that you wanted to create.
Nice. Nice. Let's put our videos back on, David. So the thing is that, you know, so many businesses that we're currently talking to, they understand that they do have to do something right now. However, look, we're all going through periods of fear, of overwhelm, some even depression, some exhaustion, and you're going to come up, we have no doubt, against roadblocks through this whole time. So David, I invite you to talk about some of the areas that people might come across where obviously you as a professional can help them in that 30-minute conversation that they are welcome to have after this. If you could give us some ideas.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I think that the first thing is to understand your numbers. And a lot of people don't understand their numbers, and they didn't prior to this. And that's not a criticism, it's just a reality. So it's something, you know, if it's a flaw in your character, or if you don't hide from it, admit it and grow with it. And this is something which I find people, they think they understand what they're doing, but they know full well that they don't. And it's understanding the numbers. The numbers aren't just a number on a page. They actually tell a story. And with that story, you can then act upon it. If you're doing well, how do we replicate that? If we're doing badly, how do we recover from that? And that's what the numbers are telling you, where to look and where the issues are in your business. The other thing at the moment, and looking specifically at the moment we're in, is the fear and the anxiety and the not knowing how long this period will last, and burying your head in the sand, which isn't the way to go forward. Now, you look around and, you know, we've seen news articles about distilleries who've seen a hole in the market about hand sanitizer and have converted their distilling operation into making hand sanitizer. And that's a step change, that's a pivot of a product. Another pivot which I've heard about is a bartender who owns a bar. And obviously he was closed down, he was one of the first to close because of the restrictions. What he did was he created a virtual cocktail hour. Now what that did is keep engagement with his clients, but it also helped him to move the stock that he had on hand, because what he would do is say, on this Wednesday, we're having a virtual cocktail hour and we're going to make a Bloody Mary. He's done his stock take. He knows he has heaps of stock of whatever it might be that, you know, to make the cocktail. And then what he would say to the people who are attending is, if you're local, come on down and we've got a box set of what you need to make this cocktail. So people would then go and buy from him, and he'd be reducing his stock holdings, which created his cash flow, but also, again, helped him to be the nice guy into helping out, and also creating that community that Michelle was talking about before. So not knowing how to pivot is something which companies are having trouble with, businesses are having trouble with at the moment, or having the confidence to pivot. You know, they might have this great idea, but they're afraid to execute it in case they're proven to be a failure. And the only failure you're going to create is yourself. Because if you try it and fail, you've tried it and you can move on from that. If you don't, you'll always be kicking yourself and going, oh, I wish I had have, or if I could have done something differently, you know, how would I react to that? And so I guess that's two things. And then the third thing is looking at the plan and the strategic plan and knowing how to create a strategy today on a series of totally unknowns, but that will help you to move forward in your business and set you up at the end of phase 1, as I called it, to move forward into the phase 2 and phase 3 and start your business over, but not start your business from scratch. So you've still retained your customers, you still kept in contact with them, as Michelle was saying, but what you also have is a strategy to move forward. You have your goals, you know what you need to achieve, and you know the trigger points that you need to look at to help your business to take each step change up, so you know when to move and when to grow and when to be in a holding pattern to make it work in the longer term.
I feel a Kenny Rogers song coming on, David. You got to know. Sorry. You got to know when to have some fun as well.
Exactly right.
Did love Kenny Rogers. Very sad we lost him. Look, the thing is that you're absolutely right. And what we're finding with our clients right now is they just want someone to hold their hand and guide them through, but not just guide them through, but actually, you know, the thing when we work together is everything is based on the numbers. It's not a guess. Everything is tracked and measured and, you know, and adapted as needed. But we can actually see if it's going to work or if it is working very quickly. And I guess the beauty of us working together is that we can tweak fast. A couple of the things that came up from when we ran the Zoom session, some of the questions and comments were, I can't think creatively about what the new products and services are. I don't know who the new ideal clients are to purchase them. Some things were, I don't know where to find these clients, you know, how much do I need to spend to attract those clients? And these are all the sort of questions, you know, that we can help you with in regards to getting your new products and services out there at this time. And then, of course, combining in with David with the new plan to make sure that we're putting things in place right now to make sure that that's going to happen as well. So what we might do now is we had a question and answer section with our people, and we thought we would just share a couple of the almost case study type points from a couple of clients that we've worked with. So the first one was an exhibition and displays company, and luckily we've been working with them about 9 months. So in December we were already talking about you know, moving from just exhibition and displays and more so moving to brand solutions so that we could expand their product and services further and also reach out to new markets. So when COVID hit, we were able to then shift, because of course they lost most of their trade show business pretty much overnight. But now they've been able to change their revenue stream into different areas. So David, if you could just talk to sort of how that affected them from a financial and business side, would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think for anyone making that decision, it's all about the return. There's no point making a total knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, we need to do this, without doing the numbers behind it and without having the structure to support it. And they had the structure within their manufacturing arm to move into that space. But it was all about understanding, will that create a positive return for them? And that was what we were working on before COVID came on. So they were set up in a place where they could then switch it on and move across some of their staff to help their business to continue to exist realistically into the future. And also then understanding the metrics behind that and understanding how many clients they needed to generate and everything like that to make it a success.
Absolutely. And so another one that we just wanted to share with you was a trades business. We're loving the trades at the moment. This particular company was a plumbing company, and most of their business was coming from commercial contracts. And of course, a lot of those had suddenly just depleted. So what we needed to do there is we needed to move them, first of all, from commercial to residential. So we looked at, well, David was able to look at the costings. David, maybe just jump in there in regards to the products and services to look at, you know, the best niches to jump into.
Yeah, and the whole thing is knowing your product line. And for them, it was looking at they obviously had various services they delivered on. What was the service that gave them the most return? And also, what was the service they could support if they were to downsize their staff? They had the equipment there, obviously, so there was no impact on that. But it was looking at, and every business should be aware of what is the highest purchased item in their stock or in their services. How many people and how much is the contribution on that? So how much profit does it drive for the business? And then also, what's the most profitable line that you have? And that was the decision process with this plumbing company: is what's our most profitable line? Let's focus all our energy into that, so that we can continue to drive forward and look at where we want our business to be in the future.
And you're absolutely right. And what we found was it was in the drainage and unblocking drains area. And of course, that as an essential service, particularly with so many more people being at home. So what we did was from a marketing perspective, is we jumped into more advertising when it came to Facebook and their other communications with their people, with their suppliers, their alliances, etc. And as a result, I'm so grateful and thankful to say that they've been able to keep on all their staff. They have dropped from 8 jobs a day to 5, but because now, as David said, they've got a product that is actually their premium product, they're actually making more money, more margin, and actually more, more profit in a time where you would think that things would be quite dire. So it's really wonderful to be able to celebrate clients that are willing to adapt and pivot quickly, and listen to the advice and take it and run with it. Yes.
And that's an example of pivoting now and concentrating on a certain product stream or service stream, and then looking at that for the future and say, well, do we become the experts in this field, and how do we set ourselves up to do that? Because you want to make the most profit going forward as your business then goes back into normality. So it may be, and again, this is something that that hasn't been decided yet, but it may be that they decide to start to focus more on this area rather than going back to what they normally did. Or if their vision is to be that holistic plumbing service, then they'll just go back to their normality and keep the ratios the same.
Absolutely. And how exciting if they, I think for them, they're pretty gung-ho, so they will add that as an extra arm, a nice profitable arm, to grow the business to the next level, which is exciting. Fabulous. Well, listen, David, I want to say a very big thank you today. I love working with you. We always have fantastic conversations, and it's really wonderful because our team can get the results so quickly for our clients. I feel so confident having David there to make sure that businesses don't grow too fast, or if they are growing fast, that he's got all the financial areas under control, so we don't send them into the ground upside down the wrong way. So David, have you got any final words for our viewers today that you'd love to share?
Well, I think, and just sort of following on from what you said, I think Michelle and I work well together because we do have that business experience. We obviously come at it from different angles, but we're also able to support each other and have discussions about potential right ways forward. And I think working together as well is beneficial for the business, because rather than marketing something that is not making money, or you don't understand what the contribution is, you have the confidence that it will be beneficial for you, or what you need to do to tweak it to make it work for you.
Fantastic. So thank you all for joining us. Remember that you have the opportunity to connect with us here on LinkedIn. Please go ahead and do that. And should you wish to have a complimentary 30-minute conversation with either of us, about anything that has potentially come up in our session today, please reach out and we would be delighted to have that conversation with you. So see you for
Definitely.
now.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David.